I am pleased to now officially convene the 2018 Durand Lecture for Public Service. We'll begin our program in just a moment, but first, on behalf of AIAA, let me extend a heartfelt thank you to Lockheed Martin, whose incredibly generous sponsorship has made today's event possible. Thanks to them, we are able to network with our colleagues over lunch, learn about innovations in our industry, share knowledge, and celebrate accomplishments. The Durand Lecture for Public Service emphasizes notable achievements by a scientific or technical leader whose contributions have led directly to the understanding and application of the science and technology of aeronautics and astronautics for the betterment of mankind. Dr. William Durand was a United States naval officer and a pioneer in mechanical engineering. He contributed significantly to the development of aircraft propellers and was the first civilian chair of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, the forerunner of NASA. Each year, the Institute's Public Policy Committee takes pride in selecting accomplished leaders in aeronautics and astronautics who can share their knowledge with you via this lecture. And we have a distinguished lecturer for you today. To make the introduction, please welcome Mary Snitch, Senior Staff, Industry Organizations, Lockheed Martin Space Systems, Advanced Technology Center, and Corporate Engineering, Technology, and Operations. Mary?
Good afternoon, everyone, and what a great way to start 2018 with our AIAA SciTech and Durand Lecture. It's my great pleasure to introduce our Durand Distinguished Speaker today, Dr. Dan Moat. I am especially and personally honored to introduce Dr. Moat because my husband and I consider him and his wonderful wife, Patsy, as our very treasured friends. I first had the opportunity to get to know Dan and Patsy in the late 1990s during Dan's tenure at the University of Maryland as president. Over the years since then, I have learned what a true champion of higher education in STEM fields should look like. I found Dr. Moat to be passionate and always unwavering in his strong support of the best and brightest students, especially at the undergraduate level. Just get him started on talking about funding undergrads, and you're in for a very interesting conversation. I would venture to say that his successes in advancing policies and initiatives in supporting STEM education, all leading to the profession of engineering, has resulted in his national recognition as an unparalleled thought leader in the field. During his tenure at the University of Maryland, Dr. Moat was once asked, "What is your most important goal as president?" And he answered simply that as president, before he left, he would like to be able to shake the hand of every single student on campus. So Dan, knowing the great influence and impact that you had at Maryland, I have a feeling that you came very close to succeeding at that. Dr. Moat was the president at Maryland from 1998 to 2010, and before that, for 31 years, was at UC Berkeley, where he chaired the Mechanical Engineering Department and then served as the Vice Chancellor. Now, as the president of the National Academy of Engineering, Dr. Moat is committed to ensuring highly competitive talent in the U.S. engineering workforce, facilitating public understanding of engineering, demonstrating how engineering creates a better life quality, and engaging the Academy in global engineering issues in support of U.S. national interest. Dr. Moat has authored over 300 publications and has been honored and received recognition in areas such as the National Academy of Engineering Founders Award and the ASME Medal. Please kindly join me in welcoming my friend and the president of the National Academy of Engineering, Dr. Dan Moat.
Greetings from the International Space Station. I'm NASA astronaut Colonel Jack Fisher. It's great to be with you for this Global Grand Challenges Summit, aimed at jointly finding solutions to goals that will improve life on Earth. Y'all are awesome. We commend the National Academy of Engineering for providing the inspiration for today's summit and a shared vision for advancing the goals of people around the globe. For it is inspiration that fuels the engine of innovation. I'm especially excited to see that a large number of you are students. Many of you are in the Grand Challenges Scholars Program that is revolutionizing engineering education while preparing the next generation for tackling the biggest issues of our time. From all of us on the International Space Station, best wishes for a summit that ignites ideas, inspiration, and initiatives that will solve the grand challenges for engineering in the future. And to prove that I'm in space, I have a ball of awesomosity, and I will spin two things at the same time. Prepare yourself. And I'll have a floating microphone. Mic drop. Still don't have my landings down. But it's still cool. I hope you all have a great night, a great summit, and I'll see you later.
Thank you very much. That was an introduction summit video for the Global Grand Challenges Summit of July 18 to 20 this year. And Jack Fisher is such a great intro. I thought I'd show that to you because that's basically the intro for the talk as well today. I really want to thank Mary Snitch. She didn't show any pictures, thank goodness, but we are very good friends for a very long time. And I know that she essentially promoted me for this really great honor to give this distinguished lecture. I mean, I'm very, very touched by this, by the way. This asking me to give this lecture is like throwing blood to a shark. You know, you just come right for it. And I also like to thank Lockheed Martin, because Lockheed not only supports this lecture, but Lockheed actually supports a lot of other things that the Academy does, including this Global Grand Challenges Summit. In fact, Lockheed has supported every one of the 3 Global Grand Challenges Summits that have come on as well. I should say, just for equal balance here, this Global Grand Challenge Summit was also supported very generously by Northrop Grumman and by Boeing as well. So those 3 companies especially made that summit a success, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Today's topic is one that I really get excited about, and Mary talked about how jazzed I get about some of these educational topics. And I think that this is a singular topic. In fact, I don't think there's another example of a topic like this in history that I know of. And I hope you know some examples so you can correct me so I won't make this mistake in the future if it is a mistake. Because this is, I think, a unique topic, I know that's an overused word, but I think it, in fact, is, and you can decide at the end whether you agree or not. I think it's one that you'd like to hear about because it has this particular quality that you won't get otherwise. Now, almost everybody, if not everybody here, has heard about the grand challenges for engineering, but actually, you probably don't know where they came from. You don't know what their real intent is, and you don't know how they play in a global platform, all right? So I want to fill out your understanding of them, and that will lead us then to the Grand Challenges Scholars Program and why that's important. And I can tell you that it's more important than you think it's going to be. Now, where did this all start? I'm basically going to tell you a story. And the story doesn't have an ending. The story is still in play, but I'm going to tell you the story and bring us up to date. It started right at the turn of the century, about 2002, 2003. A number of people looked back at the 20th century and said, 20th century was really spectacular for engineering. The engineering creations of the 20th century really transformed the country, if not the world. And we need to document this before, in this rapidly changing, advancing societies, people have forgotten about the 20th century and they're always going forward. So they got together and they wanted to create a book. The book would essentially identify the 20 greatest achievements of the 20th century, rank them in order, write a piece on each one, and then essentially that would be this documentation. That was the original program. And you can see that Neil Armstrong writes the introduction to this, and Sir Arthur Clarke actually writes the ending of this as well. So this was the book that came out of that study, and it was published in 2003. And the 20 greatest achievements you can see there they are in order. Electrification of the country was number 1, automobile number 2, airplane number 3, water distribution system number 4, interstate highway system number 15, so you see it is US-centric, internet number 13, nuclear energy number 19, new materials number 20. So it is, when you look at this list and you realize this all happened in 100 years, it kind of blows you away. I think all of these so transformational issues, and not even talking about space flight and so forth, well, it's really kind of stunning. It's kind of, makes your eyes roll back a bit. Now, think about this. This book was published. It's a National Academy of Engineering book. Didn't get a tremendous amount of press, but engineering people know about it. And the situation here is something like when your university basketball team wins the national championship, and it's on the court at the end of the game, and everybody's going crazy on the court. The press comes. The first question of the press to the coach of the basketball team, the very first question is, what about next year? Are you going to win again next year, right? You know that happens all the time. Everybody's, okay for now, what's next? It's always, so the same thing happened here. People look back at this and say, this is really great for the 20th century, but now we're in the 21st century. What is engineering going to create in the 21st century that's going to be so spectacular? Well, this question, people realized rather quickly, could not be answered. Basically, when you want to ask what engineering is going to create in the 21st century, you don't even know the topics that it's going to create by name yet, let alone what it's going to create. So it led essentially the conversation to go in a slightly different direction. One piece was, well, what is the vision for what engineering needs to create that is from what we know today in the 21st century? That's a different question. And then once you say, well, that's a possibility, we could do that, then of course you come to another question is, well, a vision needs to do what? What does it need to do? And when you get to the do what question, you end up with lots of possibilities. You could talk about health of the public on the planet. You could talk about environmental issues. You could talk about poverty and so on. All kinds of human relations issues of various kinds. There's sort of endless numbers of economic, the environmental circumstances around the planet. So the do what question actually took a long time. A committee was formed for this, and the committee had a lot of very influential people. Craig Venter, Mario Molina were on this committee. It was an international committee. Alec Browers from the UK, Calestis Juma from Kenya were on this committee as well. And Bill Perry, who was the former Secretary of Defense, was the chair of this committee. And this committee worked about a year on the kind of do what question. And they had to ponder what is it that engineering needs to do in the 21st century. So they essentially wanted to ask this question about what engineering needs to do for the planet in a way in the 21st century, because they really realized at this point this could not be something just for the United States or not just for the Western world or something like that. It really had to be for everybody. So it pondered the question of where does engineering need to go in the 21st century for the planet? Now, I don't think that I know of that anybody else has created a vision for the planet before in history, but that's what this committee did. So it essentially approached this problem like an engineering system problem. First, you need a vision. Where are you going? Then it needs goals. What do you have to do to get there? And then it needs objectives. What do you have to do to satisfy each of the goals, right? It's a kind of straightforward engineering system kind of problem. And it first focused on the vision, a vision that would essentially serve people and society on the planet. That is essentially where this committee said that engineering needs to go. And you think about that just for a second, We just got through 5 years before celebrating the 20th century, were all things that engineering had created over 100 years. Now we're talking about what engineering needs to do for people and society in this next 100 years. I mean, this is quite a transformation in a way of approaching the question. But it did come forward with a vision statement, and in 15 words, it could describe this vision statement. Continuation of life on the planet, making our world more sustainable, secure, healthy, and joyful. It's about life on the planet. Let's just say for the time being that's human life, but you could easily expand that to be all life. It's a planetary vision. That's a kind of key word that stands out very importantly. And it's just talking about progress, making our world more sustainable, secure, healthy, and joyful. 4 measures of how life is going to improve: sustainability, security, healthy, and joyful. Then it set about essentially to find the goals for it, okay? And that is essentially what happens when you get to the grand challenges for engineering. Ultimately 14 grand challenges for engineering are the goals that need to be satisfied to realize this vision. You see, these goals now are planetary goals, by the way, as well, because the vision is planetary. So the vision and goals are both planetary. So satisfying the goals will get you there. So that's the basis for the grand challenge for engineering, is the realization of this vision. Now, a couple of points to note here. First of all, as I said before, these are planetary goals and vision, both together. Secondly, there are 4 measures of improvement of life on the planet. That is the security, health, and so forth, healthy and quality of life. The third point, and the kind of key point, is nobody is in charge. Who is in charge of the planet? Who are you going to assign this project to? What part of your department are you going to turn this charge over to? Like nobody, right? So you're talking about a vision that has nobody in charge to execute it, but you're going to try to execute it anyway. There's also no losers in this game. That is, no one's losing anything. Everybody, all the progress is forward. More sustainable, more healthy, more secure, more joyful. And it's about people. It's not about things. This entirely different point of view for how to move an engineering thought forward. It's really start off with a focus on people, and of course, the things will naturally follow. The counter-argument, of course, earlier in the 50s, the 20th century, was you started off with the engineering, and it was to serve people. But the focus was on the engineering, not serving the people, at least from the point of view of the public. This is starting about focusing on the people, and the things will follow to serve the people. So basically, they're all in there, but the question is, where's the focus? So, let's see, I think I may have gone, no, all right, sorry. So these are the 14 grand challenges for engineering. It's a little bit far for me to read this. Let me just see over here. You see, this is make solar energy economical, provide energy from fusion, develop carbon sequestration methods, manage the nitrogen cycle, provide access to clean water, restore and improve urban infrastructure, advance health informatics, engineer better medicines, reverse engineer the brain, prevent nuclear terror, secure cyberspace, enhance virtual reality, advance personalized learning, engineer the tools of scientific discovery. Like most of NASA's robotic missions and so on are all tools of scientific discovery. Providing access to clean water, you can see very much as it's a local issue. That is, even within a country, even within the United States, the access to clean water is going to vary tremendously from place to place because of circumstances. So you can see that this is going to require, on a global sense, a lot of local solutions that are going to be patched together. It's embedded in the whole process. Restoring and improving urban infrastructure, that's an increasingly drastic problem, especially as the globe urbanizes more and more in this century, as we know. And of course, reverse engineering the brain, essentially, this was from 2008. President Obama initiated the BRAIN Initiative in 2013, 5 years later, and they put about $1 billion into it, so they've moved that along quite well. So you can, some of these have moved along quite well, and some of them are kind of stalling a bit. But you see work is going on on all of these topics. So the issue then is that you have the 14 grand challenges. Many of you are working on some of them, as a matter of fact. The objectives are the solutions that will deliver each of these goals. As we now look at the objectives for a second, there's really two approaches to the objectives. I break them down into the initiative group and the kind of talent group. The initiative group is basically what you think it is. Groups take one over, and they start to work on it. They create solutions. It's kind of a direct engineering kind of project. The talent group talks about creating the workforce, creating the engineering workforce that will take these on, because this is basically a century-long initiative. It's going to require people coming along today who are students or not yet, even yet students, who will be excited about taking on these global projects, and they'll be excited about making these contributions and working on these multidisciplinary projects as well. And the talent group is talking about preparing youth today for working on these going forward. So it's another approach. So you can look at this as the objectives part having a kind of initiative group, normal engineering initiatives, and then the talent group is basically preparing the workforce. Now the workforce preparation is a very interesting and a very important problem because basically the current engineering programs around the country and other countries don't prepare students for these projects. They in fact, the current engineering programs prepare students for working in the countries that their programs are in. Chinese programs prepare Chinese students to work in China. U.S. programs prepare U.S. students to work in U.S. and so on. These programs are all multidisciplinary and they're international and they're multicultural. So actually the workforce today, education, doesn't prepare students directly for working on these problems or even inspire them to be interested in it. So you need something else to think about here in terms of preparing the workforce. I want to talk just a little bit then about the workforce part of this question. Now, how this came about was that Grand Challenges were published in 2008 as a National Academy of Engineering report. Almost immediately, 2 deans of engineering and a president of Olin College, Tom Katsileas, who at the time was dean of engineering at Duke, now he's a provost at UVA, and Yanis Yortsos, who was the dean of engineering at USC, where he still is, and Rick Miller, who is the president of Olin College, they got together and they said the following question, basically the question I just discussed with you. He says, if this is really where engineering needs to go in this century, shouldn't we start preparing students to work in this direction, or at least think about this direction, or get excited about this direction, or introduce them to this direction to see what would happen? They didn't know what would happen, right? But they had this idea. So that in 2009, 1 year later, at Duke, they introduced what they called the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. It was to talk about this workforce question. Now what they did is they took the Engineer of 2020, which was essentially a National Academy's report about the talents that engineers will need in the year 2020. They took that report and they took the need to prepare students for the Grand Challenges topics together and created a Grand Challenge Scholars Program that anybody could take on. When I first heard this, I have to admit, I thought this was impossible to do. And the reason I thought it was so difficult, or extremely difficult, or limiting difficulty, is that if you think about one university creating a program, and then the university across the street considering that program, the chance of that university across the street taking up the program is close to 0. It just never happens. All kinds of reasons why it doesn't happen. So now you're going to create a program that not only will that university take it on, but every university in the country will take it on. In fact, every university in the world will take it on. So a university in Bangladesh or in Korea and Africa, they'll be able to take it on just as well as a university in the United States. How could you create a program where that could even be a possibility, let alone one that would be practically possible? And the solution to this they proposed, basically, from my perspective, is absolutely brilliant. They avoided the problem where it breaks down, and they included the value that you needed to create. You lost no value and you eliminated the problem. And that's with this Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And it's surprisingly straight. Basically, these programming experiences supplement an engineering education program. It's not actually an entire program. It's a supplement to a program, okay? Secondly, it's an outcome-based supplement. You just talk about the outcomes that the students need to acquire. You don't talk anything about the administration of the program. You mention nothing about administering the program, about how many credits are required, how many hours of this or how many hours of that, or whether it's given on weekends or not, and so on. You leave all of that to each university. So the university then admits all the students. Some universities will admit only honor students. Some will admit students with grade point average over some level. Some will admit all engineering students. Some will admit all students on the campus, graduate or undergraduate. In fact, that's what happens. So the university decides who to admit. The university determines how they will be instructed to achieve these competencies I'll talk about, these outcomes. And the university determines whether they achieve those outcomes or not. And if they do, they then are anointed as a kind of Grand Challenge scholar, okay? So the university is in charge of its program. In other words, every university creates an independent program, independent from all the other programs. They decide. So therefore, when you go to a foreign country, if you go to China, for example, you don't muck around with a Chinese program. They run their own program. You don't have to engage with the Ministry of Education. They don't have to make any changes. They just can include the supplement to the programs they already have. So every university can keep its own program the way it has. It doesn't have to change it at all. It just decides this can add some supplement to its program, and it can decide how it wants to do it. So the program really hits on 5 outcomes that are important. And these are the 5 outcomes that the university agrees to. And the university wants a program, it has to agree to 5 student outcomes. That is, outcomes from the point of view of the student, okay? One is a kind of research, I call it the talent outcome. It's a research or creative experience where the students get a mentored, project-based experience of some kind on a Grand Challenge-like topic. That's it. They get that experience. That's the only technical part of the 5 outcomes. They have to have some experience. Secondly, there's a multidisciplinary experience. That is that the students have to understand that these problems are multidisciplinary, and they have to understand what it means to work on a multidisciplinary problem through their own experience. There's a business and entrepreneurship competence. That is, the students have to understand that viable business models are necessary if their solution is going to be implemented where it's going to be implemented. They have to get this understanding very early. So Bangladesh has one viable business model, and China might have a different viable business model. These are multicultural understandings necessary. They have to understand that their solution has to work in the culture that's intended. This is a problem that frequently occurs. US students don't tend to think about the culture of implementation when they create a solution. And a social conscious competence. That is, this is about serving people and society. This is not about making money. This is not about a new gadget of some kind. It's about serving people and society. So these are 5 competencies: research, multidisciplinarity, business and entrepreneurship, multiculturalism, social consciousness. Those are the 5 competencies. And every university that has a program just agrees to do that. This book is one that you might be interested in buying. This is The Starfish and the Spider. Okay, very briefly, this was written by 2 MBAs from Stanford, Brafman and Bergstrom. And what it does, it classifies institutions into 2 groups, spiders and starfish. The spiders are typical organizational structures you think about: CEO, sub-CEO, sub-sub-CEO, and so on. Hierarchical organizations with a central organizing centerpiece to it. Starfish are organizations with no central organizing structure. Alcoholics Anonymous, things like Apache Indian Tribe, even eBay to some extent. eBay is just a transactional operation between buyers and sellers, so it doesn't really affect them. So the reason this is important to know about, the subtitle to this book
is the unstoppable power of leaderless organizations. The unstoppable power of leaderless organizations. And it points out if you cut the spider in two, you end up with two halves of a dead spider. If you cut the starfish in two, you end up with two starfish. So starfish are very difficult to kill, okay? Spiders are very easy to kill. Most wars are designed to kill spiders. But starfish are very difficult to kill. That's why we have terrorist groups and others like that are so hard to capture. The Grand Challenge Scholars Program is a starfish. Each one of those Grand Challenge programs, Grand Challenge Scholars programs, is independent of each other. They're not centrally organized. They're not centrally controlled. They're not owned by the academy. They're all independent. That gives them a chance to survive as well. And that's why this is such an important idea, because if you have a planetary vision that's necessary to full, you need to have, since you don't have leaders, you have to have leaderless organizations that are out there because there is no leader for them. That's where that comes in, why it's so important. It's the only way to get out there. Now, just where are we in this whole program? We've moved along on this Grand Challenge Scholars Program just by promoting the idea. By the way, there's no money. No one's ever gotten any money in any of this, by the way. This is all done by the ideas driving the whole thing. There's 58 university programs now that are university programs under review or in place, actually. And another 51 are in preparations. So our goal is to have probably a couple of hundred university programs on this. Once again, all independent of each other and all driven by their own resources and stuff like that, only by their own interest, by their own idea. We have about, internationally, we have about 6 university programs that are currently approved or under review. Another 23 are in preparation. We should get about a couple of hundred international programs as well. That'll be a good foundation. And those will be the Grand Challenge Scholars programs that will link the Grand Challenges to their universities, to their countries, and they'll provide that reach globally that this program needs as well. In other words, that's the way it's going to move forward. The students are very excited about this. The students in many cases are the drivers of these programs as well. These are the countries that are currently have or are developing programs. Most of those countries you recognize as well. We think we'll get a lot more countries as this goes along because, in fact, it's the students that actually drive the programs as well. So the importance of the students in this program is really twofold. One is that there needs to be a workforce for these grand challenges going forwards, and this is a good basis for creating the workforce. And secondly, these students can take the grand challenges ideas to their home countries, and that will be part of the moving of the program throughout the world because there is no central control that can do it. Otherwise, there's no country that can do that, no group of countries can do that for the rest of the world. So it's a very interesting idea that's growing steadily, and it has a future that you can't predict entirely at this point. It's just keep moving after 10 years. This was the Global Grand Challenge Summit I mentioned. This was National Academies of Engineering, the Royal Academy of Engineering, and the Chinese Academy of Engineering had this summit here in Washington, D.C. It was sponsored, I said, by Lockheed, Boeing, and Northrop, as well as Shell, this last summit. And there are about 900 people at this summit. More than half of them are students. And this was started off to be a 3-day summit from the 18th to the 20th of July, but actually extended from about Sunday to Friday, as a matter of fact, because extra add-ons that were added on because of the interest of the students, in fact. So the students, which were over half of it, were the great drivers of the whole program. So a couple of points to make here is I believe the Grand Challenge is the first vision for engineering vision for the planet in history, and if you have some other examples, please let me know as soon as you can. I think the Grand Challenges actually answer two important questions for the public that the public doesn't understand. The public has no idea what engineering is. That the answer the public normally gets is that someone says, well, I'm an engineer and I do this. But the Grand Challenges, those 14 topics, cover a range which is really important for the public to see so they get a sense of what engineering does. And secondly, it also answers the question, how does engineering serve people in society? That's what it focuses on as well. So those two topics alone are really important for public understanding. The global vision really mandates global solutions, as I said before. You can't have that otherwise. And these solutions depend on locale. That means that if you have things like providing access to clean water, that you're going to have lots of solutions that are going to be patched together. That's going to be the nature of these. So that's why it requires boots on the ground for this ultimately to succeed. The students really are inspired by the vision and the challenges. They like the idea, they like the social consciousness idea, the humanistic ideas that are wrapped into this. And that seems to be a big attractor. Over 50% of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program students are females or minorities, by the way. That's way over their representation in the student population. It's a high attractor. And so preparing the workforce talent for these global challenges, first of all, it's not a normal feature of engineering education. Not in the United States, not in China, not in Britain, not anywhere. And therefore, that's one of the reasons why this is attractive. It essentially provides an opportunity to bridge a national program to a global one, especially one that also could be focused, in this case, on the grand challenges for engineering, but actually could be focused on something else, because the first of the 5 competencies is a talent competency. Right? We have it here focusing on a grand challenge issue, but if you're interested in something else, it could be focused on something else. So it's very flexible, a lot of dimension to it, and that's why it makes it attractive, especially since it doesn't muck up the normal engineering program at all. It's very easy to accommodate. It's basically a National Academy of Engineering priority. It's a priority because it has legs, it has a lot of momentum, it has high potential value, and is moving rapidly after 10 years with no financing by anybody over this period of time. It's still expanding at a high rate. I cannot think of another program in history that has that characteristic. So it is unique, I believe. And it's like riding a horse in a stampede in the dark. You don't really know how far it's going to run or whether it's going to go off the cliff or not. But you really can't get off it because you have to see how far it's going to run because it's such a big topic. It could really be transformational on a literally global scale. One of the few times in your lifetime you ever have a chance to work on a transformational topic that could be on a global scale. So you have to keep riding it as far as is it going to go. So this Grand Challenge Scholars Program is available to all, by the way. Every university that happens to be represented in this room could have one. In fact, after the summit, the Brits were all over the British Academy for wanting to know why they weren't more prominently involved in the whole thing. So that's all I have to say about it, and I hope you got some ideas about what this is about that you didn't have before we started. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Moat, for such a fitting tribute to William Durand. And now on behalf of AIAA, it is my privilege to present you with the Durand Certificate and Medal.
Does this mean we're engaged?
Yes.
Okay.
Again. Oops.
Thank you very much. Here, Mary, you get
So we hope you've enjoyed today's program, sponsored by Lockheed Martin. Their generous support of this lecture is greatly appreciated, as by doing so, they continue their long and storied tradition of supporting the kinds of discussions that will drive our industry forward in our quest to evolve technology and better understand the universe we inhabit. So this afternoon's sessions are now resuming. Please be sure to take advantage of the many events and activities that fill this week. Thank you for participating. We look forward to seeing you the rest of the week. Thank you.